The moment my eyes open, I'm already falling. Wind screaming past my ears, torchlight spinning above me like a dying star, and somewhere, far below, stone floor waiting to turn me into paste. I don't even have time to panic properly before my body, a body that is not mine, a body with soft hands and no calluses, twists in the air on pure instinct and grabs a banner rope bolted to the tower wall. My shoulder nearly rips out of its socket. I scream. Somebody up on the balcony I just got thrown off of laughs. Still alive, little brother? Shame. That voice. Smug. Amused. Like watching a bug struggle is the best part of his evening. And that's when it hits me. In the middle of dangling 300 feet above a castle courtyard, I have no idea who I am, where I am, or why a stranger just tried to kill me. What I do know, with terrifying clarity, is that yesterday, I was a mechanical engineer named Daniel, 31 years old, drowning in student debt, eating cold noodles at 2 a.m. while debugging a turbine simulation. I remember a truck. I remember headlights. I remember nothing after that. And now I'm hanging off a medieval tower by a rope, wearing silk pajamas, with a killer smiling down at me like this is a Tuesday. Great. Just great. I claw my way up onto a narrow ledge, lungs burning, and that's when the memories start bleeding in. Not mine, but his. The body I'm wearing belongs to a prince, Prince Cassian Aldervane. Second son of a dying kingdom, the spare, the sickly one, the one everybody at court calls weak, useless, a waste of a crown, the boy who just got shoved off a balcony by his own half-brother, Prince Roderic, heir to the throne, golden warrior, adored by the army, and apparently completely fine with a little light fratricide. I should be dead. By every law of physics I understand, I should be a red smear on the courtyard stones right now. Instead, I'm alive, shaking, clinging to a gargoyle, carving with my heart, trying to punch through my ribs, and somewhere underneath the fear, a colder part of my brain, the engineer part, is already doing math. Angle of the fall, tensile strength of old rope, distance to the next ledge. That part of my brain just saved my life. And that's when I realize, I didn't survive because Prince Cassian was strong. I survived because I know things this world has never seen. Guards find me an hour later, shivering on a lower rampart, and the story that spreads through the castle by morning is that the sickly second prince slipped. Nobody investigates. Nobody cares. That's the first thing I learn about my new life. In the kingdom of Aldervane, nobody protects the spare. The second thing I learn is worse. Aldervane is losing a war it can't afford to lose. The neighboring empire of Draxmore has tripled the size of its border garrisons in the last 2 years. Draxmore has cannons, real ones, cast bronze, terrifying. And Aldervane has knights in plate armor and longbowmen who still think gunpowder is a rumor from foreign sailors. My new father, King Edmund, is old, tired, and slowly losing his grip on a council stacked with nobles who'd rather bicker over taxes than prepare for an invasion that's already on the horizon. My new brother, Roderic, is popular, ruthless, and one bad accident away from becoming king a lot sooner than anyone expects. And me? I'm a footnote. A weak, coughing prince nobody expects to survive the year, let alone inherit anything. Here's the part nobody in this castle understands yet. I spent 6 years of my old life studying mechanical engineering. I know how steam pressure works. I know how to smelt better steel, how to gear a mill, how to build a rifled barrel, how to organize a factory floor for output instead of guild tradition. I have, quite literally, 100 years of industrial revolution sitting in my skull, and every single noble in this castle thinks I'm too sickly to hold a sword. They have no idea what's coming. I spend the first week doing exactly what everyone expects, coughing, staying in bed, being pathetic and forgettable, because the smartest thing a hunted man can do is convince his hunter he isn't worth hunting anymore. Roderic stops watching me so closely once the rumors say I'm fading. Perfect. Let him think that. While the guards assume I'm dying quietly in my chambers, I'm sneaking down to the old, half-abandoned castle forge in the dead of night with a candle stub and a stack of stolen parchment, sketching things this world has never seen. A water wheel with proper gear ratios, a simple piston, a furnace design that could double the heat output of anything the royal smiths are currently using. The forge belongs to an old blacksmith named Bran, a grizzled man with burn scars up both arms and absolutely zero patience for royalty. When he catches me down there at midnight, covered in soot, sketching diagrams he's never seen before, He doesn't bow. He doesn't call for guards either. He just stares at my drawings for a long, long moment. "This shouldn't work," he mutters. "It'll work," I tell him. "You're the sick prince, the one who faints during sword drills. I'm also the prince who just designed a furnace that'll cut your smelting time in half. Want to test it, or want to keep bowing to a brother who's going to get us all killed?" Bran doesn't answer right away. He just picks up a piece of charcoal and starts correcting one of my measurements, muttering under his breath the whole time. That's how I know I've got him. That's the first alliance. It won't be the last, and it definitely won't be the easiest. Word travels fast in a castle, even about things people think don't matter. Within 2 weeks, the guards notice the forge lantern burning long past midnight. Within 3, someone reports it to Roderic's spymaster, a quiet, watchful woman named Mira, who serves as just a maid, but reports everything she sees straight up the chain to my brother. I don't know that yet. I find out the hard way, when Roderic corners me in a hallway with 2 of his sworn knights standing behind him like a wall of steel. "Heard you've taken an interest in the forge, little brother," he says, tilting his head, all false warmth. "Didn't know dying men had hobbies." My pulse spikes, but I don't let it show. Panic gets you killed in a place like this. Calm gets you ignored. "Cold rooms make my chest worse," I say. "Forge is warm, that's all." He studies me for a long second, the kind of look that makes you feel like he's peeling back your skin to see what's underneath. Then he smiles, claps me on the shoulder hard enough to make me stumble, and walks away laughing with his knights. He doesn't buy it, not fully, but he doesn't think I'm a threat yet either, and that's the gap I need. Because the moment Roderic decides I'm dangerous, I'm dead. No tower accident required. Just a knife in an alley or poison in my wine. I have a window, and it's closing fast. So I stop being careful and start being fast. Over the next month, working with Bran in stolen hours, I build the first real prototype. A simple pressure-fed forge bellows, powered by a redesigned water wheel, down at the old mill stream nobody uses anymore. It sounds small, it isn't. That single upgrade lets Bran's forge run hotter, longer, with half the manual labor, which means better steel, faster. When he forges his first blade with the new system, it comes out stronger than anything the Royal Armory has produced in a decade. He holds it up to the torchlight, turning it slowly, and for the first time since I met him, the old blacksmith looks less like he's tolerating me, and more like he's afraid of what I actually am. "You're not just clever," he says quietly. "You're dangerous." "Only to people who deserve it," I tell him. He laughs. Actually laughs. A rough bark of a sound, and for the first time, it feels like I might actually survive this. I should have known better than to feel good about anything in this castle, because that's exactly when the real problem starts. A trade envoy arrives from Draxmoor 2 weeks later, officially to discuss the border, unofficially to size up Aldervane before an invasion nobody's said out loud yet. And leading that envoy is a woman I wasn't prepared for at all, Lady Wren Halcourt, daughter of a disgraced Aldervane noble house that fled to Draxmoor years ago, now serving as the Empire's chief engineer diplomat. Sharp eyes, sharper mind, the kind of person who notices things other people miss, like, say, a supposedly dying prince walking around with soot under his fingernails and calluses that shouldn't exist on soft royal hands. She corners me in the castle gardens on the second night of the envoy's visit, arms crossed, studying me like I'm a puzzle she's already halfway through solving. "You're not sick," she says. No greeting, no pleasantries, just that. My whole body goes cold. "Excuse me? Your hands, your posture. The burn mark on your forearm that's shaped exactly like the edge of a forge trough." She steps closer, lowering her voice. "I've read every design manual Draxmoor's engineers own. I've never seen a water gear ratio like the one Bran's mill is running. That didn't come from any book in this kingdom." I freeze. Because if she reports this to Draxmoor, if word gets back that Aldervane's sick, useless second prince is secretly building something new, everything I've spent a month risking my neck for gets crushed before it starts. Worse, if Roderic hears it from a foreign envoy instead of guessing it himself, he won't hesitate anymore. He'll act. "What do you want?" I ask, because there's no point pretending anymore. She's already seen through me. And that's when she smiles. Not cruel, not smug, something else entirely. Interested. "I want to know how you did it," she says. "Because whatever this is, It's the first genuinely new idea I've seen out of this kingdom in 10 years. And I'd very much like to know if there's more where that came from. I had no choice. I tell her enough, not everything, never everything, to prove I'm not bluffing. And in exchange, she doesn't report a word of it back to Draxmore. Instead, she does something far more dangerous. She offers to help. That should have simplified things. It didn't. Because now I've got a foreign engineer with divided loyalties inside my inner circle, a blacksmith who trusts me more than he should, a brother who's one bad rumor away from finishing what he started on that tower, and a kingdom sliding toward a war it has absolutely no way of winning, not with knights and longbows against an empire that already has cannons rolling toward the border. I need more than one clever forge upgrade. I need an industrial revolution, and I need it fast, and I need it hidden from everyone who could kill me for having it. So I build faster. With Wren feeding me details about Draxmore's actual battlefield tactics, and Bran turning my sketches into working steel, we move from small upgrades to real weapons. A rifled barrel design, crude but functional. A basic breech-loading mechanism that lets a soldier reload in seconds instead of the agonizing minute a standard musket takes. None of it is perfect. All of it is centuries ahead of anything Aldervane's army has ever seen. We test the first working rifle in the dead of night, out past the old mill where nobody wanders. Bran loads it with shaking hands, aims at a wooden target 40 paces out, and pulls the trigger. The shot cracks through the darkness like thunder. The wooden target doesn't just get hit, it splinters apart. Nobody says anything for a full 10 seconds. Then Bran turns to me, and for the first time, there's something in his eyes that isn't just respect, it's belief. This changes everything, he whispers. He has no idea how right he is. Because word of a strange gunshot near the old mill reaches the castle by morning. And this time, it doesn't just reach Mira's ears, it reaches Roderic's. He summons me to his chambers personally. No knights this time. Just the two of us, a fire crackling low, and a look on his face I haven't seen before. Not amusement. Calculation. Strange noises out past the mill, he says, watching my reaction like a hawk. Sounded like thunder on a clear night. Funny thing to hear, don't you think, little brother? I keep my face perfectly still, even though my heart is slamming against my ribs. Storms are unpredictable this time of year. He circles me slowly, the way a wolf circles something it hasn't decided is prey yet. You've been busy lately. Forge lanterns burning past midnight, new calluses on hands that used to shake holding a training sword, and now thunder on a clear night, right near the one building you've suddenly taken an interest in. He stops directly in front of me, and his voice drops to something quiet and dangerous. I don't know what you're building down there, but I intend to find out, and when I do, if it's what I think it is, he leans in close enough that I can feel his breath. You should have let yourself fall off that tower. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because the very next morning, before Roderic can send anyone to search the forge, before he can act on his suspicion, the entire situation blows apart in a direction none of us saw coming. Draxmore's envoy departs early, 3 days ahead of schedule, without proper farewells, without the usual diplomatic formalities. And that same afternoon, a rider arrives at Aldervane's gates, half dead from hard riding, carrying urgent news from the border garrisons. Draxmore's army isn't massing for another year of tense standoff. It's moving, now. Cannons, cavalry, and infantry columns stretching for miles, aimed directly at Aldervane's weakest border fortress, a crumbling relic called Thornhold that hasn't seen real reinforcement in a decade. The war everyone feared is no longer a rumor. It's 3 weeks away, maybe less. The throne room erupts into chaos. Nobles shouting over each other, generals arguing about troop numbers that don't exist. King Edmund looking older and grayer by the second as the weight of an unwinnable war settles onto his shoulders. And through all of it, Roderic stands at the front, jaw tight, already planning to lead the defense personally. A defense built on knights and longbows against an army with modern artillery. He's going to lose. Everyone in that room knows it, even if nobody says it out loud. And that's when I do something that shocks the entire court into silence. I step forward. Send me to Thornhold, I say. The room goes dead quiet. Roderic actually laughs, a short, disbelieving bark, before he catches himself. King Edmund stares at me like I've grown a second head. The sickly second prince, the one who nearly died falling off a tower, volunteering to command the defense of the most vulnerable fortress in the kingdom against a modern army. "You can barely hold a sword," Roderic says, voice dripping with contempt, though I catch the flicker of something else underneath it. Suspicion. He knows exactly what's been happening in that forge. He just doesn't know what it means yet. "I don't need a sword," I say, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I need 3 weeks, 40 of the kingdom's best smiths, and every scrap of iron this castle can spare. Give me that, and I'll give Thornhold a defense Draxmore has never seen." King Edmund studies me for a long, silent moment, the kind of look a dying man gives when he's got nothing left to lose. Behind him, I can see Roderic's jaw tighten, torn between wanting me gone from the castle and wanting me nowhere near real power. Finally, the king speaks. "Granted," he says, "fail, and it changes nothing for this kingdom. Succeed," he pauses, something unreadable in his eyes, "and we'll see what kind of prince you really are." Roderic doesn't argue. He doesn't need to. If I fail, I die at Thornhold, and the problem solves itself. If I somehow succeed, well, he'll deal with that when it happens. He has no idea what's coming. 3 weeks isn't nearly enough time to build a working industrial base from nothing. But it's enough time if you already have the blueprints in your head, a blacksmith who believes in you, and a foreign engineer with nowhere else to turn. Wren comes with me. Officially, she's monitoring diplomatic interests. Unofficially, she's burned every bridge back to Draxmore by helping me, and we both know it. Bran comes too, along with a dozen of the sharpest smiths and millwrights he trusts enough to loop in on the secret. Together, we turn Thornhold's crumbling outer works into a rushed, desperate, half-mad workshop. Forges running around the clock, water-wheel-powered bellows hammering out barrel after barrel. Crude but devastating breech-loading rifles stacking up faster than anyone thought possible. It's not enough. Not fully. Rifles alone won't stop cannons and cavalry. So I push further than I meant to this early. Cannon of our own, cast rough and fast, packed with grape shot instead of solid rounds, because we don't have time to perfect anything. Trenches dug in patterns no medieval general has ever seen, angled to funnel cavalry charges into overlapping fields of fire. Every trick from every history book I half remember from my old life, thrown together in 3 desperate weeks by a dying kingdom's forgotten second son. The night before Draxmore's army arrives, I stand on Thornhold's crumbling wall, with Bran and Wren beside me, staring out at torchlight spreading across the horizon like a slow-moving wildfire. Thousands of soldiers, real cannons. An empire that's been preparing for this war far longer than we have. "We're not ready," Bran mutters. "We're never going to be fully ready," I say. "We just have to be ready enough." Wren doesn't say anything. She just checks the sights on the nearest cannon one more time, jaw set, and for a second, I catch something in her expression that isn't fear. It's the look of someone who's chosen a side and isn't turning back. At dawn, Draxmore's army begins its advance across the open field toward Thornhold's walls, banners snapping in the wind, cannons rolling into position with the slow, terrifying confidence of an empire that has never lost a siege like this. They have no idea what's waiting for them. The first cavalry charge hits our angled trenches and disintegrates into chaos within seconds. Horses stumbling, riders thrown, the entire front line collapsing into confusion no medieval battlefield has ever produced. Then our rifles open fire. Not the slow, single-shot muskets Draxmore's scouts reported seeing in the region, but a rolling storm of rapid, reloadable gunfire that cuts through their advancing lines like nothing this world has ever built before. Our crude cannons answer their real ones, grape shot tearing through infantry formations packed too tight, too confident, too unprepared for a fortress that shouldn't have had this kind of firepower. For one long, brutal, deafening hour, the battlefield in front of Thornhold turns into something out of a nightmare Draxmore's generals never trained for. And then, through the smoke and chaos, I see him, a rider breaking away from Draxmore's command line, pushing hard toward our gates under a hastily raised white banner. Their commander, calling for parley. They're not retreating because they're losing the war. They're retreating because they've just seen something that terrifies them more than losing one battle. A kingdom they thought was helpless suddenly wielding weapons from a future they can't explain. Word of Thornhold's impossible defense reaches the capital before I do. By the time I ride back through Aldervane's gates, the story has already spread through every tavern, every guard post, every noble house in the kingdom. the sickly second prince, the one everyone wrote off as dying, single-handedly stopped Draxmoor's invasion with weapons nobody has ever seen. The people who used to look past me in hallways now stop and stare. The soldiers who used to snicker at my name now snap to attention when I pass. And King Edmund, my father, the man who granted me command expecting failure, receives me back into the throne room with something in his eyes I've genuinely never seen there before. Pride. But not everyone in that castle is happy to see me walk back through those gates a hero. Roderic watches from the edge of the throne room, arms crossed, jaw tight, the golden favorite son suddenly overshadowed by the brother he tried to kill off a tower less than 2 months ago. And when our eyes meet across that crowded hall, there's no more pretending, no more false warmth, no more smug little jokes about spare princes and dying siblings. Just a promise, cold and clear, written all over his face. This isn't over, not even close, because a war I just barely survived was never the real threat in this kingdom. He is. And now that the whole court has seen what I'm capable of, now that I've proven the weak, dying prince was hiding an industrial revolution the entire time, my brother isn't going to wait for another convenient accident. He's going to make sure the next attempt actually works. For a while, though, nothing happens. And that's almost worse. 2 weeks pass in the capital, and Roderic doesn't so much as look at me twice in public. No threats, no confrontations, no smug little jabs in crowded hallways. He's polite, distant, perfectly composed, like a man who's decided patience is a better weapon than a knife in the dark. I should feel relieved. Instead, every quiet hallway feels like a held breath. I know this kind of silence. It's the silence right before something breaks. I don't have the luxury of waiting to find out what he's planning, because Thornhold changed more than just my reputation. It changed the entire kingdom's understanding of what's possible. King Edmund, still cautious but no longer dismissive, grants me a small workshop inside the capital itself, officially a Royal Engineering Commission, unofficially the first real industrial foothold Aldervane has ever had. Bran runs the forge floor. Wren manages logistics and coordinates with the handful of merchant guilds willing to quietly supply raw iron without asking too many questions. And I finally have what I never had back at that abandoned mill. Resources, workers, and time to build something bigger than a single fortress's desperate defense. We start with rifles for the standing army, real ones this time, refined past the rushed prototypes from Thornhold. Then a proper foundry, one that can produce cannon barrels in weeks instead of months. Then something even more ambitious, a rail line, crude and short, just enough track to prove that goods and soldiers could move across the kingdom faster than any horse-drawn wagon ever could. Every advancement I introduce lands like a small earthquake through Aldervane's rigid, tradition-bound court. Guildmasters who spent decades protecting outdated methods suddenly find their entire trade obsolete overnight. Nobles who built their fortunes on old systems watch new wealth flow toward a workshop run by the prince they used to mock. Not everyone is thrilled about a revolution. Some of them are furious. A delegation of guild leaders storms the throne room, demanding I be stripped of my commission, calling my methods dangerous, unnatural, a threat to the old ways that have always worked. King Edmund, to his credit, doesn't budge. Not after Thornhold, not after watching an empire's cannons get turned back by weapons his own son built from nothing. But their anger doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. And underground is exactly where Roderic has been quietly building his own network of allies. That's when Mira comes to me. I still don't fully trust her. She spent months feeding information straight to my brother, but something's shifted since Thornhold. She corners me late one night in the workshop, glancing over her shoulder before she speaks, voice low and urgent. He's meeting with Duke Halric Voss, she whispers. Tomorrow night, privately. My stomach drops. Voss commands the second-largest private army in the kingdom, and he's spent years resenting the crown for taxes he considers theft. If Roderic is meeting with him in secret, it isn't a social visit. What are they planning? I ask. I don't know everything, Mira admits. But I heard enough. They're not waiting for the old king to die naturally anymore. And they're not planning to move against the throne. They're planning to move against you first, before your workshop grows any bigger, before the whole kingdom starts looking at you instead of him. At the time, I had no idea just how far Roderic was willing to go to make sure that never happened. I thought I had weeks to prepare, maybe more. I was wrong. 3 nights later, fire breaks out in the workshop district. not an accident, not carelessness, but a coordinated blaze set at 4 different points simultaneously, clearly meant to burn everything I'd built down to the foundation while everyone was asleep. Bran and I managed to save the foundry itself, dragging equipment out through smoke thick enough to blind us, but half the finished rifle stock burns before the fire crews arrive. By the time the flames die down, one of Bran's apprentices, a quiet boy barely 16, always the first to volunteer for a late shift, doesn't make it out. I stand in the ashes at dawn, soot-covered, furious, grieving a boy whose name I only fully learned the week before he died, and something inside me goes very, very cold. This wasn't a warning. This was Roderic telling me, without a single word, exactly how far he's willing to go, and that should have broken me. It didn't. Because grief, it turns out, makes for excellent fuel when you point it in the right direction. I bring the evidence straight to King Edmund. Witness accounts of men fleeing the fire scene wearing Duke Voss's livery under cloaks that didn't quite hide it. A half-burned letter Mira manages to recover from a courier, who never made it back to deliver it. It's not enough to convict a duke of treason outright, not in a court still ruled by nobles more loyal to old alliances than to hard evidence, but it's enough to make King Edmund do something I never expected. He summons the entire court, Roderic included, and publicly places the royal workshop, and everyone working inside it, under direct crown protection, backed by a new company of soldiers answering only to me. Roderic's face, when the announcement is made, is a masterpiece of controlled fury. He smiles. He bows. He congratulates me in front of the entire court like a proud older brother. And underneath every polite word, I can see it plain as day. He's not backing down. He's recalculating. That should have been the end of round 1. It wasn't. Because 2 days later, Duke Voss's private army, the one nobody officially connects to Roderic, the one everyone in the capital quietly knows he's been arming for months, begins marching toward the capital under the thin pretense of a tax dispute with the crown. It isn't a tax dispute. It's a coup, and everyone in that castle knows it. King Edmund, weakened by age and years of a kingdom sliding toward ruin, doesn't have the strength left to rally the old guard fast enough. The royal army is still scattered from the Thornhold campaign, understrength and undersupplied. Roderic, conveniently, offers to lead the defense of the capital personally, a defense that would leave him standing at the head of every loyal soldier in the kingdom, right as Voss's forces unexpectedly fail to actually attack the walls, letting my brother walk away looking like the hero who saved the throne, with an army loyal only to him. I see the plan the moment he proposes it in the War Council, clear as a blueprint. Everyone else sees a prince stepping up to protect his kingdom. I see a coronation in disguise, so I do the only thing left that can stop it. I stand up in front of the entire War Council, in front of my father, in front of Roderic himself, and I lay it out. The fire, the letter, the timing of Voss's march that lines up perfectly with Roderic's sudden offer to command every loyal soldier in the capital. The room goes deadly silent. Roderic's mask finally cracks. "You'd accuse your own brother of treason," he says, voice low and dangerous. "Based on rumors and half-burned scraps of paper?" "I'd accuse my own brother," I say, loud enough for the whole council to hear, because he tried to kill me off a tower before any of this started, and he's been trying to finish the job ever since. For one long, unbearable moment, nobody moves. Then King Edmund, older and grayer than I've ever seen him, looks at his firstborn son with an expression that finally shows the truth, cracking through years of denial. "Is it true?" he asks quietly. And Roderic, golden, beloved, favored Roderic, doesn't deny it fast enough. That hesitation is all the confirmation the room needs. What happens next moves faster than I expect. Loyal guards move to detain Roderic before he can escape the chamber, but he's not the type to go quietly. He draws steel in the middle of the throne room, and for one terrifying second I think this ends in blood, right here, right now, in front of the entire court. Then Bran, of all people an old blacksmith who followed me into that council chamber uninvited because he refused to let me walk in there alone, steps between us with a length of freshly forged steel that wasn't a decoration. Roderic doesn't win that fight. He barely tries. The moment he realizes the room has turned against him completely, guards on every side, his own sworn knights hesitating instead of rallying to his defense, he does something none of us expect. He runs. Straight through a side corridor, out toward the stables, gone into the night before the confusion in the throne room even fully settles. And outside the capital walls, Duke Voss's marching army, the one meant to hand Roderic a false victory and an army's loyalty, is left leaderless. Its entire secret purpose collapsed overnight. The coup that should have crowned my brother falls apart before a single shot gets fired. I should feel relieved. For about an hour, I do. Then a rider arrives from the northern border with news that turns my relief into something much colder. Roderic didn't run to hide. He rode straight for Draxmoor's border, and by morning, word reaches the capital that he's been received not as a fugitive, but as a guest, an exiled prince with intimate knowledge of Aldervane's new weapons, its workshop layouts, its defensive weaknesses, offering all of it to the one empire that just got humiliated at Thornhold and has every reason in the world to want revenge. He thought running would save him. He had no idea he'd just handed Draxmoor exactly the weapon they needed to finish what they started. Standing on the capital walls that night, watching torches flicker along a border that suddenly feels a lot closer than it used to, I understand something with total, bone-deep clarity. Thornhold wasn't the climax of this story. It was just the opening move. My brother is alive, furious, and sitting inside the war room of an empire that now has everything it needs to build the exact same weapons I do, except this time, they'll have an army large enough to actually use them. The Industrial Revolution I started to save one kingdom just became the reason two of them are about to go to war with weapons neither side has ever truly faced before. And somewhere out there, past that dark horizon, my brother is smiling. Wren finds me still standing on that wall long after the rest of the court has gone to bed, her arms crossed against the cold, her eyes fixed on the same dark horizon I can't stop staring at. "You know what he's going to tell them," she says quietly. "It isn't a question." "Everything," I say. "The forges. The rifling process. The trench patterns that broke their cavalry at Thornhold. All of it. They'll rebuild faster than we did," she says. "They have more smiths, more iron, more soldiers than Aldervane will ever have." I know. Then what happens next? I don't answer right away, because the honest answer scares even me. What happens next is that the quiet, desperate industrial revolution I built in secret to save one crumbling fortress has to become something far bigger, far faster, and far more dangerous. An entire kingdom retooled for a war that's no longer a possibility, but a certainty. No more hiding lantern light in an abandoned mill. No more pretending to be a sickly, forgettable prince nobody watches too closely. From here on, every choice I make happens in the open, under the eyes of a court that finally believes what I'm capable of, and under the eyes of a brother who now knows exactly what I'm capable of too. Bran finds us a few minutes later, soot still under his fingernails from a night spent salvaging what he could of the burned workshop stock, and he doesn't waste time on comfort. He just looks out at the same dark horizon, jaw tight, and says the only thing that matters. Then we build faster than they can copy. He's right, there's no other option left. Not with a brother selling secrets to an empire with cannons and a grudge, not with a kingdom that only just started believing an industrial revolution could actually save it, not with a workshop still smoking from the last attempt to burn it to the ground. I look out past the walls one more time, toward a border that used to feel far away and now feels like it's breathing down our necks, and I make myself a promise instead of a plan. Whatever Roderic and Draxmoor are building over there, whatever weapons my own knowledge just handed them a head start on, they're not facing a sickly, forgotten second prince anymore. They're facing everything I know how to build, everything Bran knows how to forge, and everything Wren knows about how their own empire fights. Thornhold was the first battle of this war. It was never going to be the last. And somewhere across that border, my brother is teaching an empire everything I taught a kingdom, which means the next time our armies meet, it won't be a rushed, desperate defense of one crumbling fortress. It'll be a war between two industrial revolutions, and only one crown is walking away from it. This nightmare isn't over. It's only just getting started. The scream that wakes me isn't mine. It's Edmund's steward, sprinting down the corridor outside my workshop at an hour when nobody in this castle runs for anything short of fire or death. I'm elbow deep in a cannon breech mechanism, hands black with oil, and I still remember thinking, in the half second before the door slams open, "Good. Whatever this is, it's not about me. I was wrong. It's worse than about me." "The king," the steward gasps, doubled over in the doorway. "He collapsed." "Council chamber, you need to come now. I don't remember crossing the castle. I remember pieces, a hallway blurring past, a maid pressed flat against the wall to let me through, the taste of copper in the back of my throat from running too hard on lungs that, a few months ago, couldn't survive a flight of stairs. And then the council chamber, packed with nobles who don't know whether to look terrified or thrilled, and my father on the floor in the middle of it, gray-faced, breathing in short, wrong little pulls, while two physicians argue over him about bloodletting like it's still a real medicine and not a good way to finish the job the stress already started. I push through. Kneel. Take his hand. Father. His eyes find mine. There's still something sharp in them, underneath the pain. The same look he gave me the day he granted me command of Thornhold, expecting to bury me for it. He grips my fingers, weak, but not nothing. Roderic, he breathes. Not a question, not even really to me, just the name sitting on his tongue like a wound that won't close. That's when it lands, cold and simple. My brother didn't just betray this kingdom when he rode for Draxmoor's border 2 weeks ago. He put a knife into the one man holding this whole crumbling structure together, and it's only now, watching Edmund shake on the floor of his own council chamber, that the wound is starting to show. I didn't see any of what happened next across that border. Not directly. I want to be honest about that, because everything I'm about to tell you came to me in pieces, through Wren's old contacts, through frightened merchants who'd crossed back over before the border closed properly, through scouts who watched from hilltops with spyglasses and reported what they saw without ever hearing a word of it. But I've stitched it together enough times since then that I can walk you through exactly what my brother was doing on the other side of that line, while our father lay dying by inches in his own throne room. Roderic didn't arrive in Draxmoor as a fugitive. He arrived as a gift. Their court received him with the kind of careful, hungry attention you give a man who just handed you the answer to a war you were losing. Within days, he was seated at their war council, not as a prisoner, not even really as a guest, but as something closer to a consultant, walked from workshop to workshop by Draxmoor's chief engineers, describing in careful, technical detail exactly what he'd watched happen at Thornhold. The rifled barrels, the breech-loading mechanism, the angled trenches that had turned their proudest cavalry charge into a slaughter. He didn't have my blueprints. He'd never had access to those. But he didn't need blueprints. He had eyes, a soldier's memory for battlefield tactics, and 8 weeks of watching me build something no one in this world had ever built before. That's the part that should have terrified me the moment I heard it, and it did, eventually. But that morning, kneeling on stone floor with my father's hand going slack in mine, it hadn't caught up to me yet. All I could think was, he's dying, and the man who tried to kill him along with me is out there right now, teaching an empire how to beat us. The physicians finally get Edmund onto a litter. I walk beside it all the way to his chambers, and I don't let go of his hand until they force me to, and even then I don't leave the corridor outside his door for hours. Wren finds me there eventually, sitting on the cold floor with my back against the wall, staring at nothing. She doesn't say anything comforting. That's not her way, and honestly, I'm grateful for it. She just sits down next to me, close enough that our shoulders touch, and says, "How bad?" "Bad," I say. The physicians won't say it plainly, which means it's worse than they're willing to say plainly. She's quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, "You know what this means for the succession." I do. I just haven't let myself think it yet. If Edmund dies, and every unspoken look from every physician in that hallway says when, not if, the crown doesn't wait politely for me to be ready. Roderic is gone, exiled by his own actions, sitting in an enemy court. That leaves exactly one heir of royal blood inside these walls, me, the sickly second son who 6 months ago couldn't hold a sword steady through a full training drill. Now I'm supposed to be ready to wear a crown while fighting a war my own brother is actively arming the other side to win. Great, just great. I don't get more than a day to sit with that particular horror before the next one arrives, because Wren corners me the following evening in the workshop, with something folded tight in her hand, and an expression I haven't seen on her before. Not fear exactly. Something closer to old instincts waking up after a long sleep. "I need to show you something," she says, "and I need you to understand I didn't ask for this. It found me." She unfolds the paper on the workbench between us. It's small, cramped handwriting, half of it in a cipher I don't recognize. Some kind of engineer's shorthand, symbols instead of full words. The sort of thing you'd only understand if you'd trained in the same workshops she had. "Who's it from?" I ask. "Someone I used to work with." "Before I left." She says left, like the word costs or something. Draxmoor's engineering corps isn't large. Everyone at the senior level knows everyone else. This is from a man I trained under for 2 years before I was sent to Aldervane on the trade envoy. "And he's writing to you now because he still thinks I'm one of his own," she says flatly. "As far as he knows, I'm gathering intelligence for the Empire, same as always. He doesn't know I burned that bridge the moment I decided to help you." She taps the paper. This is routine correspondence, from his perspective. Which is exactly why it's useful. People don't lie in letters they don't think anyone dangerous is reading. I lean over the cipher, and even without fully understanding the shorthand, I can see the shape of what's in it. Timelines. Resource allocations. The kind of dry technical language that means nothing to a courtier and everything to someone who's spent the last months building a factory from nothing. "Translate it for me," I say. "All of it. Don't soften anything." She does, and it's worse than I braced for. Draxmoor isn't just listening to Roderic's descriptions and taking notes. They've pulled forge crews off 3 separate provincial projects and consolidated them into a single crash program under direct imperial oversight. Every smith, every millwright, every engineer they can spare, working around the clock on a single directive: reproduce what Aldervane built at Thornhold, as fast as possible, whatever the cost. My old contact's letter puts a number on it that makes my stomach drop. Draxmoor has roughly 4 times the smiths, 6 times the raw iron reserves, and an emperor willing to bankrupt half his treasury to close the gap before it becomes permanent. "How long?" I ask, and my voice comes out steadier than I feel. "Realistically, working rifles, not perfect ones, working." Wren studies the letter again before she answers, like she's hoping a second read will change the math. It doesn't. "Weeks," she says, "not months. Weeks. I built my lead over months of stolen midnight hours in an abandoned mill, 1 candle stub and 1 stubborn blacksmith at a time." Draxmoor is about to close that entire gap with brute institutional force in a fraction of the time it took me to open it. Every advantage I bled for at Thornhold, every reason we're still a kingdom and not a smoking ruin under occupation, has a clock running on it now, and the clock is Roderic's memory of everything he watched me build. So that's the plan, I think, standing there in a workshop that suddenly feels smaller than it did an hour ago. He can't beat me with a knife in an alley anymore, so he's going to beat me by teaching an entire empire to become me. That should have been enough bad news for 1 week. Life apparently disagreed. 2 days later, King Edmund calls a full council session. Not from his sickbed, but propped up in the throne itself. Gray and diminished but upright. Because whatever else my father is, he's stubborn, in exactly the way that keeps kingdoms from falling apart a day too early. Roderic's chair sits empty at the council table, and nobody has moved to fill it, like the whole room is waiting for something that isn't coming. Edmund doesn't waste time on ceremony. His voice is thinner than it used to be, but it still carries. "I will not pretend my health is what it was," he says, and the room goes very still. "Nor will I leave this kingdom's future to chance while an empire sharpens its knives on our own son's memories." His eyes find mine across the table, and there's something in them I still haven't fully learned to read. Not quite affection, not quite calculation, some tired mixture of both. Prince Cassian has earned the right to lead this kingdom's defense. I intend, before this council, to name him heir apparent. I should tell you the room erupts into celebration. It doesn't. A handful of nobles, the ones who watched Thornhold turn their sons and levies into a victory instead of a grave, nod slowly, like they saw this coming and made their peace with it already. But a much larger cluster near the back of the chamber, the old guild-aligned families, the ones who've spent the last months watching their traditional trades get quietly obsoleted by a workshop full of rifles and gear ratios, go very quiet in a way that isn't agreement. It's calculation. The kind of silence that starts planning objections before the king has even finished speaking. Edmund sees it too. He's old, not blind. "This will not be finalized today," he says, before anyone can voice a formal challenge. "There are procedures. I am aware of them, better than most of you." A thin, humorless smile, but I wanted this council to hear it directly from me, while I still have breath enough to say it directly. Prepare yourselves accordingly. The session ends without a vote, without a formal ceremony, without anything that actually changes my legal position in this kingdom. And somehow it changes everything anyway, because now every noble in that chamber knows exactly which direction the wind is blowing, and a target that used to just be dangerous rival of Roderic's has become the next king of Aldervane, which is a very different, very much larger target to paint on a man's back. I walk out of that council chamber feeling less like I've been honored and more like I've been marked. Bran finds me back at the workshop that evening, elbow deep in the same cannon breach I abandoned 2 days earlier when the steward's scream first tore through my life. He doesn't ask how the council session went, he can read it off my face well enough. "Heard the news," he says instead, settling onto a stool across the workbench. "Heir apparent. Big words for a man who was faking a chest cough 8 months ago to avoid sword drills. Don't remind me. Somebody should." He picks up a length of half-finished barrel, turning it in the lamplight, checking the bore with the automatic, unconscious precision of a man who spent 40 years with his hands in forges. "You're not just building weapons anymore, Cassian. You're building a kingdom that's going to have your name on it whether you're ready or not." "I know. Do you?" He sets the barrel down, and for a second, the old blacksmith gruffness drops away entirely, replaced by something almost gentle. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been running on fear and forge smoke since the night I caught you sketching gear ratios by candlelight. That works, for a while. It got us through Thornhold. It's not going to get you through wearing a crown while an empire 4 times our size races to copy everything you know. I don't have an answer for that, because he's right, and we both know it. I've been moving forward this entire time because stopping felt like dying. First literally, dangling off that tower, and then figuratively, every time I let myself imagine what happens if Roderic's next attempt actually lands. I haven't stopped to ask what happens if I win. What kind of king a man becomes when he built his entire foundation on fear of falling. That's a question for later, though. Later, it turns out, doesn't wait very long. 4 nights after the council session, a rider comes in hard from the northern border garrison. Not urgent message hard, but the kind of ride that kills horses, mud-splattered and shaking, demanding an audience before he's even finished dismounting. Wren and I meet him in the war room together, because by this point we don't really do anything separately anymore, not when it matters. The scout's report is short. It doesn't need to be long. 2 nights ago, a border patrol stationed along the ridge overlooking Draxmoor's nearest garrison heard gunfire in the dark. Not the isolated crack of a single hunting rifle, but a sustained, rolling volley, the unmistakable rhythm of multiple weapons firing in disciplined sequence. They crept close enough under cover of darkness to see torchlight and movement across the valley, soldiers in Draxmoor colors, drilling with long-barreled weapons against wooden targets, reloading and firing again in a pattern that looked less like an accident and a great deal more like practice. "How many weapons?" I ask, and my voice comes out flatter than I intend, the engineer part of my brain already doing the grim arithmetic even while the rest of me is still catching up to what this means. "Couldn't say for certain, Your Highness," the scout says, still catching his breath. "More than a handful. Enough that it didn't sound like a test anymore. It sounded like training." The room goes very quiet. Wren's face has gone carefully, professionally blank. The same expression she wears when she's doing complicated math she doesn't like the answer to. Bran, standing near the door, mutters something low and unrepeatable under his breath. And I stand there at the center of the war room, heir apparent to a dying king, staring at a map with a border that suddenly feels a great deal closer than it did an hour ago, and I understand with total, sinking clarity exactly what that gunfire in the dark actually means. My brother didn't hand Draxmoor rumors. He handed them a working blueprint drawn entirely from memory, and their engineers turned it into steel faster than anyone, even Wren, thought possible. The lead I bled 8 months to build, the one advantage standing between Aldervane and an empire that outnumbers us in every measurable way, isn't shrinking anymore. It's already gone. And somewhere across that border, in a war room I'll never see, my brother is standing beside soldiers wearing weapons built from everything he watched me build. And I have no doubt at all, none, that he is smiling exactly the way he used to smile back when I was just a sickly younger brother dangling off the edge of a tower, waiting to see if I'd survive the fall.